Alas, poor York, I knew him. Eh. What is my motivation here? How's it going, and welcome to No Fun Alloved's How to GM series, and today we're going to be talking about motivation. And motivation comes in a variety of ways. We're going to be talking about player motivation, player character motivation, and GM motivation. The first and foremost one that seems to come up in everybody's mind is the player character's motivation. What business does a particular person have to go on the adventure that you created? Well, that entirely depends, right? If you're running a game of D&D and you have a bunch of PCs that are poor, then adventure is very lucrative, as they can go out and get a whole bunch of gold and do amazing things. That is a very simple motivation, money and power, but it works. If you dangle in front of them a quest that says, hey, it'll get you this much gold if you go out and do something, they'll probably go out and do something. But that, of course, is a very simple motivation. What about complex motivations? What about the campaigns where the world is coming to an end, and the motivation there is that you and you alone are the only one that can put a stop to the horrible wickedness that is about to transpire? Hopefully the PCs are on board for this, and they'll go ahead and do what it takes to save the day. But those are just surface level motivations. What about the things that lie underneath? A perfect example being, if a person wants money, why is it that they want money? Perhaps that PC is going out and doing these dangerous things for money, yes, but using that money for a reason. Perhaps they have someone that is sick and they know that with enough gold they can go ahead and heal them. Maybe their lifelong dream is to start up their own little town or village or kingdom, and they need a lot of gold to pull that off. That's an excellent motivator. You have to do one thing to get another thing to get what you want. And then in regards of the supreme case of you need to go out and save the world, yes, you need to save the world, but how do you go about doing that? How do you motivate them to show up in the first place? And how do you motivate them to realize that they are the only ones that can put a stop to it? A perfect example being, if a local region is in danger of being obliterated, then you can go ahead and have it where the PCs have friends and family that reside within that area. Not only are they doing it to save the general population, but they're doing it to save someone near and dear to their hearts. Giving these PCs motivations to go out and do the things that they do are intrinsic to making an amazing campaign. At one point in role-playing history, every single game you'd just go out and do amazing adventures and get gold and repeat process, and that was all the motivation you needed. But nowadays we've evolved. We want more. We want more intrigue. We want more substance. We want to be connected to the world, and making sure that those PC motivations are there and exist and are clearly present to the PC is so intrinsic to making just an awesome campaign. Now, the PCs aren't the only characters in this world that you have created. There is undoubtedly a ton of NPCs, and that is where the second portion of this is going to come in, the GM motivation. You have to sit there and come up with all of these NPCs' motivations for why they do the things that they do. Why is it that they go out and do things? Why do they say that thing to the characters? And why is it that they could potentially hinder or help your party? Well, once again, those are very simple. If they are a villain, they are doing it for a reason, much like we discussed. Perhaps they are doing it for money, and maybe the underlying current is that they want this money because they want to start their own kingdom. If you're running a type of horror game, then perhaps there is a cult leader that is going out there and sacrificing people, and they are doing so for the purpose of summoning a devil. That can certainly be a very easy motivation to suss out, and keeps in that line of why the person does what they do. But more often than not, your players are going to be interacting with everyday people or good people, in which case the motivations are going to be clear as well. The common folk have the motivation of trying to keep a simple life, and that's that. They're going to do everything in their power to try and get out of any sort of bad situation. And of course, when you have the good aligned people that are interacting with the party, they may have similar motivations alongside your PCs, except they may have underlying motivations which are not present, and that can cause rift later down the line. Something I strongly recommend doing is with every NPC that your players are going to be interacting with in a major way, go ahead and write down 1 or 2 sentences about their motivations in the world, and whenever you look at that, that is going to help you figure out how to roleplay them in a certain situation. How does their motivation interact with how they're interacting with the world right now? If their motivation is to get past this one area and your players are the only one to get through that area, of course they're going to say, hey, can I join alongside you? They may have ulterior motives later on, but for the time being, their motivations are aligned and they're going to work together. Once both you and the players understand the motivations behind all these NPCs, it's going to make the world feel more real, more lived in. And those motivations will certainly be a driving factor in if your players get attached to certain characters more than others. And lastly here, I wanted to talk about player motivations. Of course, the PCs in-game want to do a certain action, and of course, all the NPCs want to do a certain action. But what about the players? What is their motivation? Well, their motivation should be to have fun. And how do they go about having fun? I can't tell you what fun is. Fun is subjective. They are showing up to your table to go ahead and play a game. Everyone at the table has to say openly what motivations that they have to play the game. What do they want out of it? Do they want a high-octane action-adventure game? Do they want a mysterious game? Do they want a heavy RP game with no combat at all? They have to go and present these things right from the get-go, because if their motivations to play the game are not met, they're not going to be playing the game anymore. If they expected one thing, but the game is something entirely different, then their motivations are going to be shattered, and they're going to try and find another group to play with that meets their motivations. And then inversely, when you have those motivations right there on the table, everyone knows what everyone wants out of the game, and that is provided, they're going to be so motivated to play the game. If you are running a game that fits everything that they want, they're going to be excited to show up every single time. They're going to be waiting for it. They're going to be loving it, and you're going to be loving it as well. Having players excited for that next session is fantastic, and if you're helping provide what they want, and of course what you want out of the game, it's going to be an absolute blast. So remembering those PC motivations, those NPC motivations, and the players' motivations, and making them full front and present and complete in your game, it is going to be an amazing game. Your players are going to love showing up to the table, and when they show up to the table and roleplay as those PCs, their PCs are going to be motivated to do what they want to do. And when they interact with the NPCs in the world, those NPCs are going to be motivated to do what they want to do. We don't want to have people show up and not be motivated to play, and we don't want PCs that aren't motivated to go out and do anything. We play these games for a reason. We play them to have fun. And if they're just showing up and milling around and not doing anything at all whatsoever, then that really isn't that fun. And of course, if they show up and try to have fun, but you create drab NPCs that don't have any motivations at all to do anything, then they're going to feel like they're in a dead world that is just a canvas of letters and nothing of true substance. Keep that in mind. Motivation to do everything that they do. So go ahead and tell me, how do you motivate your players to show up to that table? How do you give the PCs motivation to go out and adventure and explore and have fun? And what do you do to give those NPCs in the world their motivations to interact with the world around the PCs? Go ahead and tell me these things because I want to know. That is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to all my amazing patrons up here. You guys are awesome. Thank you so very much. That is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one.